Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Canty, and this video I'm going to be talking about loving your husband. So I'm going to be specifically talking to wives, or if you're engaged, about to be a wife, or if you have a desire to be a wife one day, this video will be good for you also. So I'm going off of 1 Timothy. It says, likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can train the younger women to love their husbands. And I'm going to stop right there, okay? Because that's the focus for this video, is on training the younger women to love their husbands. So I'm going to be talking about Naomi. Naomi was the mother-in-law of Ruth. So Naomi, I'm going to be putting things down as I'm talking to you guys. Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, they actually were from Israel. They served God. We're living in a time, the story takes place in a time where there was a great famine. And so the Bible talks about that was a time where the judges were ruling, and basically everyone did as they saw fit. They lived their lives however they wanted to. So there was a great famine, and Elimelech made the decision as the head of the house, as the husband, to go ahead and move his family over to Moab. Now Moab was about 30 miles away, and it was a pagan land. It was a land that worshipped idols. They lived totally the opposite of God's law. And so, of course, Naomi follows. She leaves her home, her family, her friends, her church, so to speak. And so she, decides to follow her husband, right? And so they end up living there in Moab. They have 2 sons, and the 2 sons end up marrying 2 women from Moab. And so at that time, according to the law, that was breaking the law, God's law, because they were marrying outside of their belief, outside of their culture, right? I'll just say it like that. Naomi, one of the things that she demonstrated at that time was that she was obedient to the decisions that her husband made, even though it went against their belief system, it went against what they were taught. One of the things that really stood out in that about Naomi, and that I wondered at the time, was when I was married, when your husband makes a decision that you don't agree with. And so she set a great example, and she followed her husband. Unfortunately, great tragedy struck. Her husband ended up dying, and then soon afterwards her 2 sons died also. So she was left a widow. It was just, in a country that, or in a place that did not support how she grew up, right, in believing God. So she made the decision, and she says, you know what, I'm gonna go back home. She talked to Orpah and to Ruth. Those were her daughter-in-laws. And she said, you know what, you girls are still young. You guys can remarry, continue to live your life. I'm not gonna have any more kids. I'm well over the age. And even if I had one today, would you wait, the 20 plus years till he grew up? She decided to, bid them farewell. And what happened was that Orpah did go her way, but Ruth, even though she was not a believer, she came from from Moab and their culture and their idolatry and paganism. There just was something apparently about Naomi that attracted her to want to stay with her, to want to be with her. And so there's this scripture that actually they use it a lot when people are getting married. They use it as a vow. I'm going to read it to you guys. And it's a very powerful verse coming from her to Naomi. She said, she pleaded with Naomi. She says, no, I want to go with you. I don't want to stay here. I want to follow you. And she says, where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. That's in Ruth 1:16. Ruth ended up going back with Naomi to Naomi's country. And eventually, for those of you that aren't familiar, you read the book of Ruth, she does end up marrying a rich, godly relative of Naomi. His name was Boaz. And so in their union, they gave birth to Obed. Obed was became the father of Jesse. And Jesse was the father of David, who eventually became King David. And so in the New Testament, they mentioned the lineage of Christ, and Ruth was in there. And I can't help to point out that it very well may have been Naomi's example that drew Ruth to God. Her example of how she loved her husband, that it taught her valuable lessons about love. And this caused Ruth to know in her heart that Naomi's God was the true God. For the first time, Ruth saw a relationship between the love that Naomi had for God and the love that Naomi had for her husband. There was a connection there. There was a parallel there. Let me just be clear about something, okay? Because I learned this early on in my marriage. And sometimes women go into the expectation when they get married that what they're needing is that man to fulfill them, to provide for everything in every area in their lives. And that's not true. All of our needs, expectations, they're not going to be met by that one man, by that husband. Not that they don't want to, but they're just not able to. They're not equipped to do that. And so that was a huge eye-opener for me in my marriage. And I realized that the needs in my life, all areas in my life, could only be met through Jesus. It's really important for you as a wife to understand that. We put sometimes too much responsibility on the man to make us happy, to make us feel safe. And, some of that doesn't belong to him. Some of it, only God can provide. And so as a wife, you need to find that balance. Not only does Jesus love me, not only does Jesus love you, but he also wants to love your husband through you. Let me say that again. Not only does Jesus love you, but he also wants to love your husband through you. That's a pretty heavy statement. God has filled you. If you're married, it's important that you know this. God has filled you. He's equipped you. He's provided you with all the resources that you're going to need to love your husband through the good times and through the difficult times. Because in turning to God, it's important that you continue to find guidance, his direction. He's going to provide you the strength, and he's going to provide insight for you as a wife. I remember, oh my gosh, I have so many stories of when in my marriage when we were newlyweds and we had a disagreement. And I was mad, right? And right before, actually right after I was mad. I was like, I just wanted to get away from him. And it happened to be that we were getting ready to leave. The women were from the church to a women's conference. And I was like, good. Oh my God, perfect. Get away from him, right? And I remember I went to the conference. It was a woman, all women. And, the first day, messages, God speaking to everybody and stuff. And then in the morning sessions, evening sessions, and then Tuesday. And in the back of my mind, it was like God was dealing with me, right? About how I had left, the situation with my husband. But I was still mad. So I was full of a lot of stubbornness. It was fueling me, right? And I remember by Thursday, this was a week long, Monday through Friday, by Thursday, I was arguing with God. And I was like, no, but you don't understand. You don't see that what he does and this and that and on and on. And the last evening, I don't even remember the message that it was shared, but I remember responding to the altar call. And so I went down to the altar to talk to God, and I was still upset. But you know what? I think throughout the week, God was really just breaking down that wall, and to where by Friday evening, I was crying, and I was complaining to God, and I said, you know what, God, you don't understand, and he does this, and he don't even notice, and he don't even see, and he don't understand, and I remember God speaking to me in my spirit and saying, well, it's not going to be the first time or the last time that he's going to offend you. So what are you going to do? You're going to hold a grudge? You're going to get mad? You're going to be, you're not going to forgive? And I thought, well, yeah, I need, how am I going to resolve these kind of situations, right? How am I going to deal with them? And God said, and another thing, he's never been a husband, just like you've never been a wife. And the same way that you're learning, he's learning too. And it just blew my mind, right? How God just spoke to me. And I thought, you know what? It's true, right? We're both learning, we're both growing, and so we're in roles that we've never been. Even though God had equipped us, he was bringing out those skills or those resources as we were going through our marriage. Of course, when I got back to the conference, everything we resolved things and stuff, and our marriage just got better. God is going to fill those gaps, right, that you're unable to fill on your own, and he's going to guide you to solutions. And sometimes, a lot of times, especially with me, the solution started with me changing. And because I always wanted him to change. Well, he needs to, and he needs to. And God said, no, you need to. And as I changed, God would use that to deal with him without me there. It was God doing the work. So understand that Jesus loves you, that he's your advocate, that he wants to help you, that he wants your marriage to work to his glory, that he understands the needs that you have, and he created you to love your husband, and only you can do that, not somebody else. You're the one. So if you ask him and you trust him, and he's going to give you the strength, and he's going to give you the wisdom on how to do it. A lot of things that I learned through my marriage that they're not going to fit in a video, but I'll share as God leads me to. But the Bible does teach about 3 kinds of love. It talks about, I'm not going to go into it too much because that's like a whole different video, but it talks about the agape love. That's the unconditional love. That's the love that Jesus showed us. No conditions. He just loves us because he loves us, right? Whether we do or we don't do. Bible talks about phileo love, which is like a friendship love, a brotherly family love. Also talks about the eros love, and that is between a husband and a wife. That's sexual love. And you're not always gonna have that eros love, maybe at the beginning of the honeymoon and throughout your years, but it's not always gonna be an erotic love. We have to work at it and not slack off and not get sloppy, not neglect ourselves, growing as women, as wives, and attractive for our husbands. Don't be like those women that once they get married, they put a chongo, chanclas, and out the door. And then they get mad, they get upset when their husbands are looking a little thirsty because they're not getting taken care of at home. And that falls on you as a wife. That fell on me as a wife, right? So definitely the filial love is going to be something that's going to carry y'all, because it falls in between the eros love, right? Because the filial love is a friendship. And that's why it's always so important that before you make that decision to get married, that you have a friendship with him, with your future husband, and that you fall in love with his mind, and he falls in love with your mind and you as a being, right? And not the physical, not the sexual. So of course the goal is going to be to have that agape love between you. So I'm going to read it. It's actually in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, because this is the love that we want to strive for. This is the love that we want, our end goal. It says, love, listen up girls, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Let me say that again. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love doesn't delight in evil. When your husband fails, when the I told you so wants to come out, that's not love. But rejoices with the truth. It always protects. Are you protecting your husband from gossip, from the women at work or at church or at school, wherever, from your family, that they don't gossip about your husband? Because you're not protecting him. Love always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And that is in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. So I hope this video helps. As always, do something good for you. If you haven't subscribed, click the button. So do something good for you, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.